In honor of National Vocations Awareness Week, I'm giving away 50 free copies of my book. But first, a story. When I first went to college, becoming a friar or a priest was definitely not on my radar. Being an active Catholic and working for the church, yes, but as a married man. Which is absolutely crazy to think about now as I'm a solemnly professed friar, I'm training for the priesthood, I'm living what I believe to be my best life, the life I feel called by God to live, that I almost didn't find it. If it hadn't have been for the encouragement of 2 people, I don't know if I'd be where I am today. The first person was actually the first friar I'd ever met in my life, my campus minister in college. On the one hand, what made this person so significant for my vocation was simply the life he was living and what he was doing. He was inspiring and he made me think about vocation in a new way. But on the other hand, in a much more tangible sense, because a lot of people inspired me and I didn't follow what they were doing, what made this friar so significant for my vocation was simply that he invited me. It may sound stupid or insignificant, just an invitation, but sometimes it's the simplest of things that can spark a vocation. He asked if I'd ever considered becoming a priest or religious. He encouraged me to take this question to prayer and to discern with God, and he invited me to the friary to eat and pray with the brothers. More than just some generic pitch he gave to every male under the age of 35, his invitation was personal and authentic. It wasn't about numbers, it wasn't about vocations at all costs. It was a genuine invitation to be his brother. And he was persistent. Oh, was he persistent. Even though I was in a long-term relationship and declined his first invitation, he continued to encourage me, continued to invite me, continued to ask me to consider in prayer becoming his brother in this order. Had he have given up so quickly, just asked the question and moved on, I probably would not be here today. Of course, it takes more than just asking a question, no matter how many times you ask it, to spark a vocation, which is why we get to our second person, my mother. In reality, both of my parents had a significant effect on my vocation and encouraged me all throughout my life, but there's one story from my mother that kind of typifies both my parents. After my first encounter with the aforementioned friar inviting me and telling me that I would make a good friar one day, I remember calling my mom to complain. Can you believe what he said? Oh my gosh, he said that I would become a good friar one day. Well, that's ridiculous. But of course, my mom, never one to disappoint, told me, well, you would. I said, no, Mom, do not encourage the crazy man. Just, no, stop it, stop. But she said, I'm not telling you to become a friar. I'm not saying that's what you should do. But I am affirming what he said in that I do think that you could be a friar if that's what God calls you to be. And more importantly, she said, no matter what you do, if you feel that God is calling you to that and it makes you happy, know that your dad and I will support you and that we love you no matter what. Wow, those are powerful words. Even though I was not discerning at the time, and frankly, I did think she was a little crazy at that time, when I did start discerning, I did start considering this life, I had that in the back of my mind already. I already knew that there were people behind me supporting, and so I didn't have to worry about that. I could discern in peace knowing that people were going to love me and support me no matter what I chose. What she said to me was incredibly significant in growing my vocation, but in a way what she didn't say was even more significant. She didn't tell me that I'd be throwing away my life. She didn't tell me that I was making a bad decision. And that might sound crazy to you. Why would a parent say that? Except I encounter it all the time. I've met maybe a dozen people who are considering the priesthood, religious life, brother or sister, and their parents have told them they were making a terrible decision, told them that they would disown them, that they wouldn't support them in what they did. To the best of my knowledge, not a single one of them ended up pursuing a vocation to the priesthood or religious life. Just as my mom's words had power to encourage me, their parents' words had the power to discourage them. And really, I think this goes for each and every one of us, not just to parents, but to all those who are faithful and interact with young people. Our words have power to encourage or discourage. Which is why, as we conclude this National Vocations Awareness Week, I want to speak not so much to the young men and women considering a vocation, but to all the parents and grandparents out there, all the teachers and coaches, all the priests and religious already living their vocations. You have the ability to invite people to do things that they would have never considered themselves. You have the ability to encourage people to do extraordinary things, to let them know that they can do this. Sometimes a vocation is born with just a simple invitation. Sometimes all it needs to grow is a little bit of encouragement. This is something that we can all do, and I want to help. One of the main reasons that I got into social media in the first place and continue to put so much time into it was to encourage vocations and to interact with those who are discerning. Maybe you can't help them or answer the questions that they need, but maybe I can. Through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, I offer a lot of outlets to interact with people and to answer their questions. Beyond that, I wrote a book. It's entitled Called, What Happens After Saying Yes to God? Stories of my own vocational discernment, how we grow deeper as disciples of Jesus Christ. I think it's an excellent resource for anyone discerning a religious vocation, and maybe this is something that you can pass along to a young person you know. Maybe this can help them take the next step. And just to show you this has nothing to do with sales or self-promotion and everything to do with vocations, I am giving away 50 free copies of my book that I will mail to you absolutely free of charge. All you need to do is click the link in the description and sign up for the contest. Unfortunately, because of the high cost of international shipping, I'm unable to send these outside of the US. I'm sorry, I wish I could send them all around the world, but unless you reside in the United States, I'm sorry, but you can't enter the contest. But that does not mean that you are off the hook. You may not have this tool for vocations, but you do have other tools. You do have other ways to promote vocations to religious life and priesthood, and frankly, I think each and every one of us has a responsibility to do so. You don't need this book to invite someone to consider the priesthood or religious life. You don't need this book to encourage someone, to tell them they can do something, to affirm them in their discernment. Really, all you need is you. Your own faithful witness, inspiring people to take this life more seriously. Your own initiative to invite someone to something they may not have considered themselves. Your own courage to affirm them in something they absolutely can do. In some places, our church is facing a vocation crisis, leading some to fear for our future. A future without priests, a future without religious, a future in which our faith is crumbling. I say, not on my watch. Just as the faith was handed on to me, just as my vocation was encouraged by others, I want to pass it on to the next generation. I want to invite new people. I want to encourage them to take up this life, this vocation. And I want to ask you to do the same. Will you take up this mission with me? Will you commit yourself to inviting people to consider this way of life, to encouraging them that they can do it? Ultimately, we know that it's only the Holy Spirit that changes hearts. But we also know that the Holy Spirit has no hands and feet but ours, no mouth but ours. Let the Holy Spirit work through you and have the courage to step forward, to use your words, to use your hands and feet, to encourage the next generation of vocations.